Seventh episode, Laurel. It's time.
For
The seventh seal.
seventh episode, seventh seal. Let's go.
Let's go. Turn up your lights.
And prep your cameras for
Lights, camera, chatter. Hello, and welcome to Lights, Camera, Chatter, where we pause, rewind, and play our way through our favorite cinematic beats. We're your hosts, Noah Gorman,
and Laurel Pung.
a couple of teachers from Southeast Michigan. In the studio with us today, or more accurately in our living room because we're still cleaning up the studio from adopting cats, is an old friend of mine, Leon Sellars. Leon and I go back to high school where we met, big shocker I know, in marching band. Leon, why don't you tell us and our listeners a thing or two about yourself and your favorite movie?
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet y'all. I'm Leon. I'm a lovable potato of a person, and my favorite movie probably is Mean Girls 2004.
All right, you want to tell us a little bit about why you like Mean Girls so much?
Oh, no. So, time to be the first to admit, I'm not a big movie buff. I don't really get around to watching movies all that often, so a lot of the movies that I have fond memories of are probably from 20 years ago, from when I did more regularly consume the media. And so, the worst thing any kind of media can do is bore me, so I'm attracted to things that are fun or whimsical or just straight amusing, and I feel like Mean Girls hits all of those in different ways.
100% valid. There's a reason that movie's popular. Glad to have you here, Leon.
Also, I did want to ask, what type of potato are you today?
We start asking all our guests that question.
I am not a baked potato, so...
That is correct. You are not.
Surprisingly, I am not a mashed potato. I kind of feel fancy today. I feel like potato scallops.
What about you, Noah?
I am personally feeling French fries today because my brain is fried.
Lovely.
You asked.
All right. Two unconscious men, two horses, and a chessboard are sitting on a beach. It sounds like the start of a joke, but instead it's the opening scene of Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal.
A Swedish 1957 historical drama and horror, one of Ingmar Bergman's most famous films, and one of his personal top 10, as we learned from a mini-doc that he made that played at the start of the film. And Max von Sydow's big break was bound to be a recipe for success from day one.
We just rewatched The Seventh Seal last night, since Leon hadn't seen it. What do you think?
I think it was overall a fascinating movie. It deals heavily with the themes of impending mortality and shaken faith, which I feel like is very relatable to every human on this world. Death is ultimately the great unknowable, and so if there is a God out there, trying to seek proof of that in face of your time coming to an end is a very relatable and fascinating subject, and I personally really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. At its simplest, The Seventh Seal is a film about the inevitability of death. This taking place during the plague and at the tail end of the Crusades. Past this, however, many critics and viewers alike regard this film as entirely life-changing.
We're gonna leave that up to you. Despite its age, The Seventh Seal is absolutely still a film worth watching at 68 years old. We personally watched the Criterion Collection remastered DVD.
Again, we're not sponsored by the Criterion Collection. We're just fans. Just a heads up, while the film is unrated due to its age, and personally speaking, I don't find anything in it that is particularly vulgar, it does touch on darker themes such as death, grief, and loss. So, viewer and listener discretion is advised. And of course, going forward, a spoiler alert for Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal. With that all out of the way, let's get to it.
Being that faith and doubt is a major theme in the film, it's no surprise to see that it opens with a narrated quote from Revelation, spoken by Death. Translated into English, the quote reads, "And when the Lamb has opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And the seven angels, which had the seven trumpets, prepared themselves to sound." It's a Bible quote, guys.
Set in 14th century Sweden, ravaged by the Black Death, Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal presents a profound exploration of existential dread and the human search for meaning. Antonius Bloch, a weary knight returning from the Crusades, is confronted by death, who has come to claim him. In a desperate attempt to prolong his life and seek answers to his spiritual turmoil, Bloch challenges death to a game of chess, not for immortality of any form, but to extend his life long enough to do something he finds worthwhile. In a first for the Lights Camera Chatter podcast, we have direct access to the screenplay for the film, translated into English, of course. And to illustrate kind of the point of what's going on, Leon and I are going to read directly from the screenplay. I am reading for Antonius Bloch, the knight who has been, of course, all sorts of disheveled by his experience in the Crusades, and Leon will be reading for none other than Death himself.
I'll be the narration of things happening,
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Behind him stands a man in black. His face is very pale, and he keeps his hands hidden in the wide folds of his cloak.
Who are you?
I am Death.
Have you come for me?
I've been walking by your side for a long time.
That I know.
Are you prepared?
My body is frightened, but I am not.
Well, there is no shame in that.
The knight has risen to his feet. He shivers. Death opens his cloak to place it around the knight's shoulders.
Wait a moment.
That's what they all say. I grant no reprieves.
You play chess, don't you?
A gleam of interest kindles in Death's eyes.
How did you know that?
I've seen it in paintings and heard it sung in ballads.
Yes. In fact, I'm quite a good chess player.
But you can't be better than I am.
The knight rummages in the black bag, which he keeps beside him, and takes out a small chessboard. He places it carefully on the ground and begins setting up the pieces.
Why do you want to play chess with me?
I have my reasons.
That is your privilege.
The condition is that I may live as long as I hold out against you. If I win, you will release me. Is it agreed?
The knight holds out his two fists to Death, who smile at him suddenly. Death points to one of the knight's hands. It contains a black pawn.
You drew black.
Very appropriate. Don't you think so?
The film intricately weaves Bloch's confrontation with mortality alongside the lives of a traveling theatrical troupe. Yoff, a clairvoyant performer. Mia, his pragmatic wife. Mikhail, the baby, and their fellow actor, Scott. Their experiences offer a stark contrast to Bloch's philosophical quest, portraying the raw realities of survival, fleeting moments of joy, and the pervasive fear that grips a society facing imminent death.
As Bloch's chess game unfolds, he and his squire Jons encounter a series of individuals grappling with the plague's devastating impact. These encounters expose the era's religious fanaticism, social decay, and the desperate search for solace. Bloch's internal struggle intensifies as he questions the existence of God and seeks a meaningful act before his inevitable demise.
The Seventh Seal is renowned for its striking visual imagery, symbolic chess game, and exploration of profound themes. These include mortality. The omnipresence of death creates a palpable sense of urgency and forces characters to confront their own mortality. Faith and doubt. Bloch's crisis of faith reflects the human struggle to find meaning in a seemingly indifferent universe. Humanity's resilience. Despite the surrounding despair, moments of human connection and simple pleasures offer glimpses of hope. The silence of God. The film grapples with the concept of God's apparent absence in the face of suffering. So as we said before, The Seventh Seal is a very important movie, both in film history and in Ingmar Bergman's career, and in Max von Sydow's career. One major thing that we noticed doing research for this episode is, as I mentioned before, that people consider this movie genuinely life-changing. Like, yes, the movie's great, but a lot of people use specifically the term life-changing, or, quote, change me forever. So, I'll pass the buck around the room. First thing I'd like to ask both of you is, why do you think people find it life-changing, and do any of us agree with the fact that it's life-changing? Leon, you're our guest. Why don't you start?
All right, thank you, Noah. Why people find this film life-changing? Like I said earlier, I think it's because it touches on very real fears that we as humans have in lives. I don't think there's anyone on Earth who hasn't at one point been afraid of the possibility of dying and hasn't wondered what happens when we die, especially if it's before our metaphorical time. And also, religion is also a huge part of many people's cultures, whether you believe in a god, many gods,
Or no God at all.
no god at all. If you believe in some kind of spiritual force, humanity throughout all of our years, we've always been trying to seek some kind of meaning and have the belief that someone somewhere is looking out for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's kind of the themes of this film. I think just having the film focus on those central questions it touches on something within all of us, and that's why people watching it might feel like seen or heard from this movie, and that can contribute to the feeling of it being life-changing.
100%.
Do you feel like that personally for you it's life-changing, or?
Oh, for me?
Do you
Yeah.
feel your life has changed after watching this movie for the first time last night? And no's a perfectly acceptable answer.
I mean, I feel like this is a movie that's gonna stick with me. It might not be life-changing yet, but I feel like I'm gonna keep thinking back about it. And there are very few movies where that happens. Like we were talking last night about Requiem for a Dream, and why I'll
Oh my
never
God, I
watch
love
that
Requiem for
movie
a
again. But that is a movie that sticks with me, and I feel like The Seventh Seal, in a strange way, is going to be a movie like that for me. I feel like it has come at the perfect time in my life, if that makes sense. These are very, speaking from experience, the year is currently 2025, and I have been thinking a lot lately about my own mortality and the existence of God. I'm not particularly religious myself, but I did grow up in having that background, and so it is something that I come back to fairly frequently. And just with everything that's been going on in the world lately and everything going on in my life, I feel as if it came at the perfect time, strangely enough.
Okay.
Which is funny because I had no idea about any of this when you invited me over to do this.
No, and I didn't even tell you the name of the movie when I asked you if you wanted to watch a historical drama with tinges of horror.
Nope, you were just like, come on over, we're watching this. And I was like, great, let's go.
You want to be on the podcast? Here you are.
Hey.
All right, Laurel,
Exactly.
what about you and thoughts on the movie?
So, I can see where people see it as life-changing. However, I guess I don't fully see it yet, and I think the reason why is just because I haven't had enough life experience yet, and I'm not feeling as close to death as maybe some of our characters in the film were.
You're also the youngest person in the room, so there's that.
By 1 year.
For those who don't know, Leon and I are both 24. We went to school together. Laurel is a whopping 1 year younger than us.
Wow, I am such a baby.
I'm older than Noah by a couple of months.
That is true. You're the oldest one.
I wanted to insert that fact randomly.
So, I will say one thing. I don't think it was ignored, but one thing that I think is important that we kind of passed over is visual media, because movies were still in their relative youth in the 50s, right? Like, they weren't brand new, but in the grand scheme of things, they're in their relative youth. It may not be the first, but it was definitely the first big movie to attempt to personify death.
Yeah.
And Death's performance by Bengt Ekeroth was excellently done. I think it gave some people almost a sense of comfort. I think slightly more recently to Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels, and had he personified death. It's a character who's neither good nor evil, but simply doing the job that he is supposed to do. He's compassionate, right?
Right.
And Pratchett openly cited, not this movie specifically, but Ingmar Bergman, the director, as an inspiration for some of the things we see in Discworld. So I would not be surprised if this was a good example.
I love
Personification of anything helps people relate to it. That's why we do it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And by giving Death, yes, a face, but a non-scary face. In fact, arguably a compassionate one, who understands that Bloke is trying to stave him off, who understands that Bloke is trying to stop him from striking this theater troupe family dead, not because he's malicious, but because it's his job, and he shows respect for that. And I think that was a major thing for people that, in some cases, may put people at ease about the idea of death. Mortality is a really tough subject. I think that's a fair statement to make, yeah?
Yeah.
And there's so many different points of view on what mortality is and what happens once,
And as
Yeah.
Leon said, you may believe in one God, you may believe in several, you may not believe in anything at all. You may believe in spiritual forces, but no gods. That's all up to you, and that's your personal life. Antonius Bloke, in the film, seeing death makes him, who again is supposed to be a crusader knight, right?
Yeah.
Someone who is devoutly religious, doubt his belief in God. And I think that's a big source of why the film was life-changing. I like the way you put it, Leon, that it's not necessarily life-changing the first time you watch it, but it's a film that will absolutely stick with you.
Oh, definitely.
You mentioned Requiem for a Dream. That's an excellent example. Until the End of the World is one that I've heard similar sentiments about, which is one Laurel and I will be watching very, very soon. But there's absolutely something to be said for not just the in the moment, but the ongoing, lasting impacts that this film has, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, talking more on leveling with the movie, Max von Sydow, it wasn't his first movie, but it was his big break, playing
Okay.
Antonius Bloke.
I can see that.
For those at home, we've seen Max von Sydow in many things. I'm pulling up the list because it's long. He's been in this. He was in the Exorcist movies. He was in The Greatest Story Ever Told. He was in Flash Gordon, Shutter Island, Star Wars The Force Awakens, Minority Report,
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. He's voice acted a number of times. He had a 70-year acting career and passed away only in 2020. He was born in Sweden and got French citizenship in the last 20 years of his life. And I would have fully believed you if you told me he was already deeply experienced in this role. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
I
believe it.
definitely agree with that.
Honestly, that was just one of those actors that kind of transcends the timeliness because he's given characters that really work with whatever role he's playing.
Really embodied that theme of death, loss, grief, and fear when we were watching the film. Just like kind of running away from it so that he could feel like he did something useful with his time in the movie. Because as we heard mentioned, like throughout the film, the Crusaders felt like they were on a fruitless task, and they lost 10 years because of it. And so they felt like they hadn't done anything life-changing in those 10 years, and that's why there's this feeling of, like, loss and grief there. But then there's also that kind of fear that, like, what is going to happen once we're gone?
And they never saw the fruits of their... Well, the Crusades were a very complex time in world history. Let's start with that. But...
Breaking it down to like the bare minimum.
Yeah.
No crusade was successful.
And no one on
Okay.
either side really ever saw the fruits of their own labor.
No.
It was something that extended far beyond anyone's lifetimes.
It was also kind of, the film grappled with the idea of being, like, in a small space with our characters, but also feeling that foreboding sense of doom from the world, things happening in the world, which at the time frame it was set, it was the Black Death, it was the plague. And there wasn't really anything those characters could do about it necessarily, but it was still something that was, like, a factor in terms of feeling that fear.
That helplessness was extremely real because obviously modern medicine didn't exist in the 14th century.
I will say that the one of my favorite scenes in the entire film was actually when Bloke was sitting with the troupe and mentioning how they would always remember for the remaining moments of their life, just how peaceful they felt, just sharing milk with friends, and eating strawberries together. And that even though this seemed like something that was really small, it brought like the sense of hope.
I think that's the only part in the film where the shadow of death finally lifts off of Bloke's character. It's the only time that he feels like a real sense of peace.
That is an excellent segue because the last thing I want to talk about is this theme of hope and human resilience. As I mentioned earlier, there are these moments of human connection throughout the film. And, again, spoiler alert for the 1957 movie, The Seventh Seal. The theater troupe folks, minus the one who turned out to be a bad person, they get to live. They get to live. They get to go on about their lives after the events of the film. And they held on. They never gave up hope. At the beginning of the film, or near the beginning of the film, Yof has a vision of the Virgin Mary basically telling him that things will be okay, right? And lo and behold, his character and his family are the single set of characters that wind up being okay. And in large part, that was due to Antonius Bloke going out of his way to stave off death. But being hopeful in a time where nothing was guaranteed. Even now, nothing's guaranteed, but being hopeful in a time where truly, like, no safety, no hope, no goodness was guaranteed.
I do want to also say that, to kind of go along with that feeling of hope from the troupe, I think it was kind of almost like an exchange between Bloke and the theater troupe. Because when the theater troupe could have just, like, walked away from everything and just probably died on their own, they chose to show kindness to Bloke. Even though Bloke was kind of like standoffish at first, but they still were like showing them kindness, and in turn, Bloke decided, well, if they were about to befall potentially dying as well, maybe I can stave off death long enough to have them completely avoid it, and then I would have done something with my life.
Doing the right thing in this world, in this movie, was not always to the character's benefit, but to the benefit of someone else. Throughout almost the whole film.
I have a question for you guys, actually.
Fire away.
So during the scene where the theater troupe ends up escaping, do you feel like Death knew the entire time that they were escaping, or do you think that Bloke was actually successful in tricking him?
So, this is me specifically using context clues of the character death, rather than like the human real life ideal of death. But
right.
Specifically using the context of the character, I'm inclined to believe that Death knew, but he showed, remember, throughout a deep respect for Antonius Bloke, right?
Right.
And so he knew. There was, for the listener's reference, there was a confessional scene where Bloke says he basically wants to accomplish one more good, virtuous thing, and it turns out the priest he's confessing to is Death. I think Death knew and respected the fact that Bloke was not doing this for himself, but trying to do the right thing. And so he simply allowed it to happen. Because theoretically, Death would be omnipotent, right?
Right.
He would have no reason not to know.
And it's shown in the movie that Death knew of the theater trope. He mentions them specifically to Antonius Bloke, and Bloke's entire demeanor ends up shifting from one who was...
When he realizes that Death is paying attention to the theater troupe more.
Right. Going from almost greeting Death like a friend to suddenly getting a lot more stern and serious about their game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to be fair, in the end, Death did end up taking a few more lives than we expected. The Dance of Death, like we saw in kind of the mural at the towards the beginning.
And also as they exit during the end.
Yeah. So Death ended up taking a little bit more life than initially expected, I think, as well. But at the same time, it also saved kind of part of the next generation, too.
Absolutely.
Pretty heavy stuff. But The Seventh Seal, life-changing or not to you now or later, is an incredible film worth watching.
Go watch it. Criterion Collection, Criterion Channel. Again, we're not sponsored. We're just fans, but that is the easiest way to get an official copy. So go watch it. We enjoyed it. Leon, I'm pretty sure, enjoyed it.
I did. I highly enjoyed the movie.
A special thanks also to, again, a close childhood friend, Leon Sellars, for joining us on set today.
Yeah.
Go!
Yes, thank you guys both for having me. This was a very fun experience. I'm excited to come back and force y'all both to suffer through Mean Girls with me.
I'm not gonna suffer. Only Noah's
We're gonna
suffer.
make Noah suffer through Mean Girls. It'll be great.
We'll save that for another episode. All right, this has been
Lights, camera,